Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the video in which we talk about the HR module of finance and operation. The very first video talks about how the infrastructure of finance and operation was merged together with the human resources standalone module. So today we're going to actually continue our conversation and talk a little bit about what is the difference between the um, two solutions. So as a recap, the first thing was that the standalone solution is not non-customizable, whereas the HR within the FNO now is customizable. So if you can make it very unique to some of the business processes that are applicable as part of the requirement for your client. And the second part was the ATS system. So in the standalone, there was an ATS system that was usually no, would be recommended by Microsoft to use for as part of the ATS integration with the standalone HR module. But in this case, when the merger happened with the infrastructure, the LinkedIn Talent Hub is not supported anymore as of now. So we'll see how that works out. Maybe Microsoft has some other plans about that. In any case, there are third-party vendors that actually have ISV solutions that integrate very well with the human resources module FNO. So you can definitely reach out to those ISV solutions and vendors if you would like to get the ATS system in place for your client. So let's continue with our second piece of this video. So if you go into the human resources, we'll actually start talking a little bit about these positions. So if I go into the open positions, for instance, you'll see this home page. So this is very similar to the standalone module. So nothing super different. And these are simply a list of all the open positions. You can have these number sequences. You can configure them accordingly. One of the cool things that I did like about this FNO infrastructure or FNO human resources is the mass update feature. So this is pretty cool. So you can actually make it data effective. So one of the drawbacks of HR, whether that be a standalone or whether that be the one in the FNO, is data effective. So a lot of things within this module are not data effective, unfortunately. For HR teams, for instance, the HR organization or the departments within an organization, they really like data effective things, which makes sense because if you want to change your compensation of an employee and it's data effective it with somewhere in the future, they would like that, and that's how they normally operate. So that's one of the biggest drawbacks I've seen in my implementation, where this module in general does not have a lot of features with data effective. Some do. For instance, here in this case, we can make it effective on the basis of whatever the batch job we set up. There are a lot of things that we can do mass update for. So what you need to do is basically select quite a few positions that you want to update. You click on mass update and you can make it either effective immediately or effective on a specific date. And quite a few other tabs that you can work with. So I'll leave that to you to play around and learn how this mass update works. While we're on that topic of data effectiveness, actually, if you look into the position itself, you could, and there has been a requirement where, one employee leaves and someone else comes in. So in FNO, whether that be, standalone or human resources within FNO, no one person can occupy one position. So what I mean by that is only one person can occupy one position. So you cannot have an overlap. So once you have some worker assigned to this position, you can no longer assign another person to this position. So a workaround in order to have a smooth transition, for instance, if this resource or if this employee is leaving or exiting the organization and you already hired somebody, so what you want to do is either create a new position and then transition them into this position. But a lot of times, what I have figured is that you can have an overlap, somewhat an overlap over day. So what you would need to do is, have an assignment end date and then hire that person for the assignment start date to the next day. So whenever the next day happens, when the time clicks in, the person is already into this position. So that's sort of how you do a workaround for data effectiveness when it comes to positions overlap. So something to think about. Microsoft is well aware of this drawback, but they just haven't got their time or team or resources, around to fix this problem, unfortunately. So there's something in the plan, but we'll see when that comes around. But that's one of the basic things that this module itself lacks. And so if you go in the view hierarchy, for instance, this is very standard, very similar to what the standalone module is, so nothing different. The layout is very much the same. Position actions, so any actions that might have been associated with it, which is standard as well. So this normally would happen, or some records would occur or happen to be in the list, is when there's a workflow associated with these positions. So if you go into the position itself, you have titles, the departments associated with these positions. You can even use this full-time equivalent, which can be part of your budgeting and whatnot. So kind of seamlessly integrates very nicely in there. Compensation region, so that's something a bit different than what I saw in standalone module. So compensation region is used for compensation, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about the compensation module in some other video. Available for assignment, that's just a date. I personally don't like to use this date, but it is available. So if somebody is available for this assignment, to pick up this assignment for reference purposes, this is the field that gets used up. So reports to position, that's the same thing. Is based on the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is based on the position. So what we saw here when we go into the view in hierarchy, it's not based on a worker, it's based on the position. So position is open right now. That is why we see an open position, and Director of Human Resources is the actual title that's coming in. So if we get rid of this title, we'll see something blank in the hierarchy. So if you want to reference what this position is about, make sure you have the title there. And we get to see the worker's name accordingly when they occupy the position. So in this case, the work assignment is blank, so nobody has actually occupied this position. Labor unions, so if an organization is unionized, this is the only thing you could use to identify if this position is unionized or not. And that's the only thing, unfortunately. There's nothing more of a functionality. From a functionality perspective, the module takes care of the union workers or any of the business process, because they're very complex. So if you actually ever implement a unionized organization and they choose human resources FNO, then you'll probably do a lot of customization just to accommodate the requirements for union related employees. And then you can have financial dimensions associated with your positions as well, and that goes with the expenses and how the business processes occur within an organization. So that's what the difference has been. Not too much of a difference between the standalone and the FNO HR module, but just to give you a bit of a glimpse on what is different. And one last thing that I want to talk about is this changes timeline. So a lot of things have been captured here as part of the changes timeline, and they do play a role in benefits and in compensation at one point. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So as you could see, the department and position type at some point were blank, and then if you go into this record at 9/8/28/2012, this department was created as this human resources. So when we actually go into the benefits module, some of these things are being picked up by the benefits module when you enroll employees into the benefit plans. So this is also something pretty cool, from an audit perspective, to have these fields being captured every time they are changed. And there are a lot more tabs that you can utilize, a lot more fields that are being captured. For instance, here within a position hierarchy, as you could see that there's no position. This position wasn't being reported to anybody, to any other person or to anyone in the organization, and at some point it was reporting to 86. So you could also create or insert columns. So see how you can work around and utilize these columns as well. So there are a lot of hidden columns that might be useful. One being, for instance, in the HR module is who modified it. So that is also available when you do HR columns. So with that, I will leave this uh, part two of the HR module and how what's the difference between the two, and we'll go to the part three where we talk a little bit more of the differences again.